Good evening, everyone. If you would all please take your seats, we're going to go ahead and get started. Also, if you have not signed in the sign-in sheet in the front, if you would please do that before you leave at least, that would be great. We need to keep a record of who's here and how many folks and how well it's attended, how well we did our job. My name is Dana Little. I'm the Urban Design Director for the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. For those of you that don't know what that is, I'll get into that a little bit in the presentation. Tonight I'm accompanied by my colleagues Jessica Corder-Seymour, who helped sign you in at the front, and Dr. Kim Delaney, who's going to be helping us record the public comments during our question and answer session. We also have Paul Schilling, the Director of the Growth Management Department for Martin County, and Clyde Doolin, who's the Growth Management Director, the Long Range Planning Director. And I think you're here to listen to us discuss and exchange with you about the comprehensive plan, and more specifically, the evaluation and appraisal review and report. So tonight, with a show of hands, how many of you made the first workshop that we had, which was in August? Okay, that's pretty good. Great. Tonight's presentation will have some of that same information just to describe the process, but we did something exciting. We ran a survey after that first workshop, and I'll get into that, but we've got the results of that tonight that we want to go through with you. I think it's pretty elucidating in many ways. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We've got a presentation for maybe 25, 30 minutes, and then we'll go into question and answers and hear what you have to say. The Regional Planning Council, we are a public agency. There's 10 of us across the state. We're the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. We include, our region is Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties. And we do everything from assist local governments with law enforcement, planning, and brownfields assistance. I've got the best job in the world. I'm the Urban Design Director, and we're the only one in the state that has that department or that division. So we work exclusively with local governments, counties, cities within our region, and we assist them with planning efforts. We act as adjunct staff, if you will. And there's 52 municipalities in these 4 counties, and there's over 2 million people. So our mantra is that we provide technical assistance to local governments, as I said, and we've done extensive work. I know many of you from our work through the pandemic with the Martin County CRA in updating their land development regulations in the 6 CRAs throughout the county. So the process to date, we were contacted by Martin County, the Growth Management Department, and we were engaged by them May of last year in 2023. And they asked us to assist with the public outreach component of this evaluation and appraisal review and report creation. Basically, Growth Management Department is tasked every 7 years to go through all of the statutory changes that have been made since the last EAR process and review those and make sure, identify if there are any statutory changes or new bills that have been adopted that may affect the comp plan and need to report to the state, and if so, actually make any changes. However, it's also an opportunity through this engagement with the public to hear from the community about issues that are of concern, things that you think, in addition to statutory housekeeping that must occur, are there issues that need to be addressed. Let me be clear. Tonight is our second workshop. This is a workshop. We're not changing the comprehensive plan tonight. There are no plans to change. There are no identified changes coming to the comp plan yet. We're still in this review process. But we've had this second workshop, and I'll go through through all the other elements of outreach just to try to make sure that the community is aware of what this is and what's coming forth and how you can stay involved. As part of this outreach, we conducted, I think, 30 or 31 individual interviews. I actually spoke to a couple of you in the office We had our workshop, as I mentioned, on the 29th, our first one. And then we kicked off the survey that I mentioned, and then tonight, here we are at our second workshop. We're going to discuss the process and like what are the objectives of this? What is this EAR thing and why do we have to do it? There's a couple of pieces of key 2023 legislation that if you don't know about, you need to know about and you need to pay attention to it. So we're going to discuss that again this evening. We're going to have some fun and go through the input, all of the survey results. And then we're going to have, as I said, an exchange of any other issues that you think need to be put on the record that needs to potentially be addressed in the future. So most of you know, in fact, I've never worked anywhere where there are commercials on the radio about the comprehensive plan. Martin County residents are probably more knowledgeable about land development regulations and your growth management plan than anywhere I've ever worked. However, I feel compelled to remind you that there are two major documents that control growth within your county. One is the comprehensive plan, and that looks at land use and growth, and there's 19 different chapters to it, and it looks at Martin County from about an elevation of, say, 30,000 feet. And then you've got your land development regulations, and that's going to tell you at the ground level what your setbacks are, what your uses are, what your building heights are, et cetera. And they need to be coordinated, and they are. In Martin County, they're actually very well coordinated. The evaluation and appraisal report deals specifically with the comprehensive plan. So I'm not going to read all this to you, but this is directly out of state statute. At least once every 7 years, each local government shall evaluate its comprehensive plan to determine if plan amendments are necessary to reflect at a minimum a period of 10 years and changes that have occurred within state requirements and state statutes. So the state says, look, we've been approving all of these bills or amendments for the last 7 years. This is a necessary time for you to check off, go back, review all of the bills that have been adopted, and make sure if they affect your comprehensive plan that you bring it up to speed. But the state also encourages local governments to look and evaluate any desired or needed changes due to local conditions. Martin County, the conditions in Martin County as a coastal community are different than they are, say, in Okeechobee County. So, each county or local government is able to tailor some of their changes or amendments as they see necessary. So, in a nutshell, the process, we got to review all the state statutes for the last 7 years, compare the Florida statute changes to all of the 19 chapters that are within the comprehensive plan. We can't even tell you tonight which of those chapters are going to be amended, if they are, because we're still going through all of the statutory changes. Identify areas in the comp plan where updates might be needed. Just because there's state statutes that have changed that may affect growth management doesn't necessarily mean it's going to result in a change in the comprehensive plan. So that's why this process, your staff, with a little bit of our help, is going through this. And then the county notified the state in December. There was the first deadline, if you will, in December of last year, to notify the state that the county is intending to go through this evaluation and appraisal review process. And so here we are. We have until the end of 2024 to complete this entire thing, although we're kind of on a fast track, I think, to get the reviews done. As I said, items discussed and identified in the EAR process may or may not result in changes to the comprehensive plan. And by the way, if there are proposed changes to the comprehensive plan, and I think most of you know this, they have to go to their own public hearing. They have to go to the LPA. So there's 3 public hearings essentially that occur for each one of those changes. They have to go to the Land Planning Agency, the LPA. They have to go to the Board of County Commissioners for a first reading, which is what's called the transmittal hearing, where you send it off to the state. They do their thing, they send it back, and then it gets final approval with the Board of County Commissioners. So, as I said, we're not approving or adopting anything tonight, and in fact, this is still the beginning stages of this whole process. Often the changes are minor. I've had the great pleasure of pouring through some of the statute changes myself, and some of them are minor Scrivener's errors or changes to dates, things like that. Some of them, however, are pretty big. And 2023 was a big year for growth management legislation. There are two items that I want to touch on this evening, and there are other items that affect different local governments in different ways, but there are two bills that I want to talk to you about tonight. And even if you know about it, it's a chance just to reiterate that we're still trying to figure out what the impacts of these are going to be. Senate Bill 102, called the Live Local Act. It is intended to provide a simpler route for developers, and I'm summarizing and I'm dumbing it down, but not intentionally, but it's intended to provide a simpler route for the development community to provide affordable housing. In fact, that's what it states in its intent, that the strategy is to carry the state toward the goal of ensuring that each Floridian has safe, decent, and affordable housing. All of them very great aspirations in the bill, in the intent. However, the details of it are such, and these are some of the details that I will summarize for you, that there are preemptions to local government. That means that local government doesn't have control over certain things. They lose some of their power. The county must authorize multifamily and mixed-use residential development in commercial, industrial, or mixed-use zoning areas if at least 40% of the units are affordable. So let me put that in layman's terms. If I'm coming in and there's a piece of commercial land, and even if it's not zoned for residential today, but I am proposing a project that has at least 40% of the units as affordable, the county must approve that project, assuming that it meets all the zoning and other regulations. And the county may not restrict density below the highest allowed density on any unincorporated land in the county. Now, the county is actually Martin County is pretty well protected by that. You have a maximum 15 units per acre across the county. We're working in some local governments where, they've got 10 units per acre here and they've got 75 units per acre there. And, how that's going to work out in the wash, remains to be seen. The maximum height. The local governments cannot restrict height below the highest currently allowed height within its jurisdiction within a mile of the proposed site. Again, Martin County's got 4 stories as a maximum height. I think, in my opinion, you don't have too many surprises there. But again, other local governments, they've got high rises a quarter mile from single-family houses. So these are some of the elements that are in the Live Local Act. The intent, we believe, is very good. We do have affordable housing crisis almost in the state of Florida, especially in the last few years. But this hasn't really fully been tested yet. So it's something that needs to pay attention. We're going to come back and talk about this a little bit more later. And then there's a bill which is called House Bill 1379. And this is essentially forcing a septic to sewer conversion. It's requiring a 10-year utility plan for septic to sewer conversion, and it's also identifying new on-site sewage treatment requirements for those that cannot connect to septic and sewer. A lot of the shalls within the language have been changed to must. Usually shall is strong enough, but now it's gone to must address and upgrade, in the treatment facilities where they cannot be hooked up. The county staff is still trying to understand the implications of this. Again, these just came out last year, but these are something to pay attention to because these will have impacts for you as residents. So we just wanted you to be aware of those. Now, honestly, and interestingly enough, whether or not these bills themselves will require modifications within the comprehensive plan, I don't know that we're sure about that yet. I know I'm not. Because, they are law now. They have to be enacted. Whether or not that affects the comprehensive plan is still being reviewed. But we wanted you to be aware of those because it was pretty significant legislation. However, we're continuing to review all of the statutory changes from 2016 to 2023. Trust me, I'm not going to highlight all those for you. It's about 10 pages worth. But again, filtering through to find out what, if any, will change the comprehensive plan or amend the comprehensive plan. So starting back in July of last year through September, we began conducting a series of one-on-one interviews, and starting with the county commissioners. And these were just conversations. It wasn't a poll, formulaic questioning or anything like that. We wanted to, start to hear from different folks in the community what the issues are. We think we know, but we want to hear from folks that live here or work here or reside here. But it was also a way for us to exchange information and say, look, if you don't know, this is what this whole EAR process is about, okay? This isn't something that was, generated within the halls of the county administration building. This is actually something that's required. It's a housekeeping element that the county has to go through. I want to just briefly go through sort of like the top 5 or top 6 list of items. Folks have different perspectives on things. Everybody's got their own perspective on things, but we tried to summarize what some of the top issues were. And I don't think these will surprise you. But this is part of the information that we're gathering for this effort so that we can put forth to county staff and then ultimately the Board of County Commissioners. This is what your community is really concerned about. If you didn't know already, we're putting it in writing for you. Western Lands. Heard about it in almost every single interview that we had. We have vast amounts of absolutely gorgeous, pristine, rural agricultural areas outside of the urban service boundaries. How do we keep it that way? Because the truth is, there are development rights that are out there, but regardless, we need to think of strategies to, if the goal is, and I think at least what we've heard, is to preserve and protect those areas, we need to really think about planning strategies to preserve those and protect them. So that was a topic that came up a lot. I'm not giving you any answers, by the way, tonight, so we don't have the answers yet. These are items I think that may not be addressed immediately in the comprehensive plan, but would warrant further discussion, throughout the course of the year. Maybe future workshops on resiliency. For instance, resiliency means different things to different people. I was frankly very impressed by how many folks that we've talked to really had climate change and resiliency as a pretty primary concern. Climate change and its effects is one. Actually, I didn't make the presentation in August, but I took this screenshot. That was Hurricane whatever, Idalia, that was like 2 days before the workshop. So, it was like real time. Heat gain, it's not just climate change, but heat gain. That's something that can be addressed in our urban areas, through shade trees, believe it or not. I actually heard about food resiliency. There are families that, it's no surprise, with real estate being what it is, cost of living being what it is. These are real issues, and these are challenges that need to be brought to the forefront and discussed. So this resiliency, which is a large umbrella that covers a lot of different items for folks, was something that was a popular isn't the right word, but a common topic. Obviously, growth and development trends. That's always going to be an issue. Where should new growth go? Okay, if you accept the fact that you are going to continue to grow at some rate or at some pace in Martin County, you legally, I don't think, can just stop people from moving here. Then where does it go? Where does it make sense? What does it look like? How does it benefit the community versus detract from it or create more problems? This ties into, in my world at least, and hopefully yours at some point, ties into the Senate Bill 102. Because right now, Senate Bill 102 is like anywhere that's industrial in Martin County or anywhere that's commercial or anywhere that's mixed use, go ahead and build affordable housing. Well, not every place makes sense for affordable housing or workforce housing. putting people out in the middle of nowhere that requires everybody in the household to have a car that costs $14,000 a year to insure and fuel and maintain, that's not very affordable. So this ties into Senate Bill 102, transit, redevelopment, all of those sort of things. But those are some of the conversations that we have. But you need to start, I think, with the premise that there will be more people moving to Martin County. And then what do you do about it? How do you be smart about it? Transportation and mobility. These are all first cousins. They're all interrelated. You're going to see some interesting data tonight from the survey. It didn't really surprise me, but when you see it presented, in percentages, the number of folks that are driving themselves or using their vehicle as their sole mode of transportation in Martin County, it's kind of shocking. And then you say, okay, well, what are the options? Well, good question. We need to work on options. But how do we improve our existing system? Are there needs to, is there a need to require more connectivity? I've always said that Martin County and Stewart, you guys are challenged to an extent mobility-wise because of your water courses, because of your beautiful geography. You're kind of limited. You're kind of funneled in different ways. But we got to think smarter, growth-wise, redevelopment-wise. Make sure that there's an educational process that people understand that if I'm redeveloping a dead, tired old shopping center, it's actually okay to connect to your neighborhood because you're going to be able to get in and get out without having to hit Canner or hit Pomeroy or hit some other larger road. Ways to grow that support transit. We're slow in Florida to catch up on transit. Some of the larger cities that you wouldn't want to live in probably are getting there, but it's something that we think we need to start discussing and taking seriously. Affordable housing. I can't tell you how many times I spoke to folks through the whole process who said, my kids really wanted to come back here, but they got tired of living in the garage. We're running out of places for people. We used to call it mortal housing. I mean, we're not talking about Section 8 or subsidized housing. We're talking about places for people who have jobs that go to work every day can afford to live. And it's becoming more and more challenging throughout the state. And frankly, we haven't done a good job throughout the state of addressing it. This is why some would say the state has overcorrected with Senate Bill 102. It's like, if you guys are going to take care of the situation, we're going to give you the tools and make you use them. One of the things that we discussed, too, through the interviews is these bills that I just mentioned, Live Local. Okay, you have to do it. It's law. Doral down in Dade County was like, we're not going to do it. That didn't work out so well. But are there ways to incentivize the use of Live Local in places where it makes the most sense? Building affordable housing in industrial parks that are out in the outskirts of town, isn't really the best way to address that problem. So one of the things that we've been discussing is that, are there ways to tailor this legislation for Martin County? Are there ways to make the good locations better than the bad locations for those that want to utilize this? And then, as I mentioned, the septic to sewer thing it's an ongoing issue, and it's just, it's something I know that the county has been chipping away at. So this was us, or this was you, in August 29th. We had almost 100 people here then, and I think we've got a really pretty good showing this evening for a second workshop to kind of virtually talk about the same stuff. There we go. Nearly 100 folks attended. Lots of good input. That was August 29th. The next day was September 1st, and that's when we launched our public survey. By a show of hands, how many of you actually took the online public survey? Okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good. We had, I'm proud to say, 644 responses to the survey. We spent a lot of time trying to craft it. It's kind of funny. It's like you can ask too many questions, and then people get tired and fade off. Or you can ask not enough questions, and then you don't get really useful information. So I think we did a pretty good job pulling it together. What I want to do now is quickly go through the questions that were on the surveys. There were 23 questions, and what the answers were, what the responses were. Question number 1, what is your age? 50% of the folks that were surveyed are over 64. No one under 18 participated. That's not a surprise. But it's a healthy number. Those that were 35 to 44, almost 12% of the total number. That's pretty good. And then considering 18 to 34, between those two age brackets, you're almost at 20%. That's pretty good. And then, but no surprise, a majority of the folks were over 45. Which of the following best describes your cultural affiliation or ethnicity? So 87% of our respondents are white or Caucasian, and the next largest group prefer not to say. So, that's interesting. But what you can't see from back there, and even though they're little slivers, we had slivers of diversity. We had a handful of different ethnicity groups. Do you live in Martin County? 96% said yes. So that's a good thing. We didn't have a bunch of people zooming in from Miami and telling you that you needed 20-story towers. 4% said no. And I'll show you a map here in a little bit. Actually, it might be the next slide. We had a couple outliers from St. Lucie County. There we go. We asked, what is your zip code? We asked folks to input their zip code. And we're still finessing this map for the report, but it's kind of a heat map. It shows that in the 34997 zip code, we had 203 responses. So what's that? That's Palm City, Port Salerno, that whole swath right in there. Actually, no, that's primarily Port Salerno. Right. And the 34990, that's Palm City and Old Palm City, that area. You guys came in second at 119 responses, so congratulations. Jensen Beach was up there with 53. We had some folks in Stewart. Folks over here, down here, we had 95 responses from Hobe Sound. So this is interesting. It just kind of identifies where, most of the responses were coming from. But the good news is that the vast majority, 99% or whatever it was, came from Martin County. Do you work in Martin County? Almost split right down the middle. 55.5% said no, 44.5% said yes. In retrospect, I wish we had asked another question, which is, do you work or are you retired? Because this doesn't tell us how many folks are retired. So maybe we'll ask a question later. You all can raise your hands. We asked 5 questions in the survey that were open-ended, meaning that what are the things that you like most about Martin County? And boy, did we get an earful. So people wrote down their thoughts. And think about this. We had 5 of these open-ended questions. We had over 600 responses. We've got over 3,000 of these written comments. So we've been going through them all, trying to summarize them for each of the questions. One way that, and obviously if I stood here and just presented, slides of typewritten stuff, it wouldn't be very effective. But there's a program that we use. It's called WordCloud. And what it can do is if you identify certain parameters, it'll lift those words that are used most frequently. So it's not a precise science. I'm giving you an explanation for this on this slide. But what are the things that you like most about Martin County? Height. I'm assuming that's low height. Low density. Beach. Small town. The community. Nature. Downtown. I think that's probably for Stewart. The schools. So this is lifting those words that were used most frequently. Like I said, this isn't scientific. When we do our report, we will do a summary, really, of each one of these, a bit more specifically. But we thought that this would be fun to see, and it just gives you a sense of where folks are coming from with such a vast amount of information. How well does Martin County accommodate those young adults who want to return home to live and raise a family? And I will tell you, this question came directly out of the interviews that we had. and some of the discussions that we had with folks that are empty nesters and kind of wish that they weren't. Almost 40% of those that responded, 37%, said that the county does a poor or not such a great job of accommodating young adults who want to return home. 40% said, okay. And then 23% said very good or excellent. But I think there's a sense that we're doing okay, or we could certainly do better in figuring out a way to accommodate those young adults, whether it's after college or get married and want to come back. You know, my work colleagues have moved back to Martin County after being here growing up. It's a great place to be and raise a family. But we need to address that. What are the three most important areas? This is a great question. What are the three most important areas the county should focus on to accommodate the return of young adults? So number one here is employment opportunities. I was kind of surprised by that. 52.3%. I don't know why I was surprised by that, but it seems to me, at least in my 20 years coming up here for work, that there's more and more employment opportunities. But that's just my observation. The number two most important area of focus for young adults is the quality of primary and secondary education. 48.5% of those surveyed said that this was a very important issue. Number three is the variety of housing options. So the housing that we've been discussing made it into the top three. But notice something interesting. Number one, 52.3%. Number two, 48.5%. Number three, 47.7%. They're all very neck and neck. You know, that tells us that these are all issues that need to be focused on. And then parks and rec, you know, I think the county does better than most with parks and recreation and environmental lands. And then community consciousness, we put that in there. Just like, well, we want to be part of the community, and, you know, I was surprised that actually made it to top 5. But this is very telling, and I'm hoping that this is good information for the county to start, you know, hopefully making policy decisions about these things. What are your thoughts on the availability of affordable housing in Martin County? So I'm going to go from left to right. The county has more affordable housing than is necessary. There are actually 11.5% of the folks that took the survey that felt that the county has more affordable housing that's needed. Now, seeing how some folks react to affordable housing projects or rental projects that come in, I can understand that. 35, almost 36% of the folks said that the county has enough. But a majority, 52.7, said that there's not enough. So each one of these, we're landing like half say yes, half say no. Not a surprise. But there's enough concern that it's an issue that, you know, again, this is more evidence that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Here's another one of those write-in answers. If you feel there is not enough affordable housing in the county, do you have any thoughts on appropriate solutions? Now, we're going to have to summarize this a little bit more tightly for the report, but it's kind of interesting. Build or affordable, need rental apartments, cost is an issue, price is an issue, stop growth, you know, so you're seeing both sides here. But you know, we had plenty of commentary on that question. So this is about Senate Bill 102. The 2023 legislative session enacted the Live Local Act, which we discussed. Are you familiar with this legislation? Right down the middle, 49.3% said yes, and 50.7% said yes. Excuse me, no. Reverse that. I'm actually surprised that 50% of the folks that responded even knew what it was. And that's how important this piece of legislation is becoming. So kudos to all of you that know, and those that didn't know, you know now. If yes, about Senate Bill 102, if you knew about it, how do you think this new legislation will affect Martin County? And these are kind of interesting. I'm not sure what to make of some of this. It's going to be busy. We're going to have more offices. We need a neighborhood grocery store. I mean, these kind of went everywhere. So again, we're going to have to tighten up the summary in the report. But clearly, folks had thoughts about, this is going to affect us. Traffic. We're going to need, like here, for instance, the mall. Is the mall a place for redevelopment? So, very interesting. Number 13, how often do you use the following transportation modes in Martin County? This is very telling. Personal vehicle, 94.3%. How many of you use MARTY? In the dark red, 91% say never. Transit can be a chicken and egg thing. It's easy to blame the transit system, but if there's not enough ridership out there because there's not enough critical mass, this is going to become a very important policy decision for the county and for the community. Walking, I was surprised. 45% of the folks say that they use walking as a transportation mode. Now, that might be just exercise, which is fine. It's good. It's important. But that's sometimes, almost 45%. Biking, again, 29%. 52% said they never use rideshare, and 72% said they never use other modes. Now, other modes might be a scooter or, one of those electric cycles or something like that. So that's, I can see how that might have a high number. But it's shocking that the majority of folks in Martin County, it's not surprising, but it's shocking, are in personal vehicles, and transit is very rarely thought of. Which of the following transportation choices, not including your own personal vehicle, are important in your community? Well, MARTY jumps up to 36%. There's a sense that it is important. And if you include sometimes and frequently, which is the dark green and the medium green, there's 78% of the population, at least that took the survey, that feel that MARTY is an important transportation choice. That's really encouraging, especially after looking at the previous slide. Biking, all of these different modes are considered important. So that's really good. So what does that mean? That means the MPO is on the right track, maybe in some of the complete streets projects that they're doing, where they're providing bicycle lanes, separated bike lanes, bicycle facilities, things like that. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You'll hear folks come in and tell you what's happening in Portland and Seattle, and and those are great. But you've got to do it on your terms. But at least start having the conversation, or more frequently have the conversation. This is one of my favorites. Do you feel Martin County should encourage the redevelopment of existing built sites over the new development of vacant lands? 91.5% said yes. That's called redevelopment. And I'll tell you, there's lots of areas in Martin County that could be redeveloped. It's hard. It's heavy lifting. Trust me. Talk to anybody who does redevelopment. We're working with a lot of different cities on mall retrofits or shopping center retrofits. It's a lot easier to go out and buy a piece of farmland, get some utilities, and laser level it flat and build some houses. Not that I'm putting that down, but I'm just saying redevelopment in the urban built areas is tough. But it makes so much sense. It's where the infrastructure is. It's where the traffic is. It's where the what transit there is. It's where it is. It's in town. It's close proximity to things. This was very encouraging, we think. Should Martin County encourage redevelopment of strategic locations along its primary commercial corridors, like, for instance, US 1 or Dixie Highway or Map Road? Still, 74%, 73.5% said yes. And I think that's encouraging too. Because it's one thing to say globally, yes, we agree, we should redevelop properties. But when we start focusing on, okay, it's down the street, I don't know if I support that so much. But these commercial corridors, look at what's happening in other cities. Don't look at just what the bad things that are happening in other cities, but look at some of the good things that are happening in other cities in terms of redeveloping some of these commercial corridors. US 1, or what we call Dixie Highway, US 1 is here. Down south in some places it's Dixie Highway or South Dixie. It's amazing what some of the cities to the south have done to transform what used to be a commuter corridor with motels, you know? So really start to think about that, the redevelopment of your city. Take the pressure off the outside, you know? And if you need to accommodate growth, do it in places that make sense. So this one was redeveloping on US 1 or Dixie or Map Road, i.e. If you support that, please describe the appropriate redevelopment, like uses and forms for those commercial corridors. And this is interesting. We've got a lot of uses. Industry, technology, we want SMORE. We want small, we want more, we want none. Marine, medical. So again, these will be filtered out a little bit more, but it's fun to just sort of see what, the snippets of these responses are. Would you support locating small limited commercial uses in proximity to residential uses to minimize and/or shorten travel distances? Now, 40% said no, straight up, but I thought it was very thoughtful that almost 50% said yes in some places. And that's a great answer because it all depends upon the context. You're not going to put a corner store, on 5-acre parcels necessarily out in Palm City. Map Road, on the other hand, the rebuilt Map Road is getting commercial that's, adjacent to neighborhoods. So it's all about context and the appropriate scale and the appropriate uses. But almost 60% of those that responded said yes, or they could consider that in some fashion. This one is not a surprise. As a coastal community within a coastal state, should Martin County revisit the issues of shoreline treatment and protection within the comp plan? As an example, living shorelines, consistency in regulations, seawall heights, etc. This is always a big topic. I was surprised that anybody even said no, frankly. But an overwhelming 87% said yes. These conversations need to keep happening, and if need be, they need to be addressed in the comprehensive plan. How concerned are you about the impacts of climate change in Martin County? Almost 58% are either very concerned or concerned. That's this pink stuff or the darker stuff on the right. Still, 28, almost 29% aren't concerned at all or don't really think it's an issue. But again, it's encouraging, I think, because I think if we had asked this question maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it would have been a different story. There would have been very few people that would have said that they're concerned about it. That's not a good thing, by the way. I mean, these climate issues are real, but we got to address them. Do you feel that issues of resiliency and climate change should be further discussed within the Martin County Comp Plan, or the Martin County in general? 63% said yes, 26% said no, and 11% said I don't know. We're almost there. 2 more questions. What industries or businesses do you feel the county should expand or attract to enhance economic development? More was the big word. Business, industry, marine keeps coming up, not a surprise. Biomedical, boats, jobs, etc. And are there other issues you feel should be discussed during this process? And affordable housing, I think, is what's coming up. Concerns about growth, maintaining the community, etc. So those are the results in a snapshot of the survey that was up for 3 months. And as I said, we got almost 650 responses. So thank you all very much who participated. It's very helpful. We are currently working on the report of all of this. We're taking the information that we heard from the first workshop and summarizing all that input, summarizing the input that we got from the interviews. We'll be summarizing, hopefully, what we hear from you this evening. And I just wanted to give you a little sense that, we're putting together this report that will be part of the EAR package so that the state knows that the county took this seriously and did a multifaceted effort to try to reach out to you all and let you know what's going on. So as I said, that's sort of the breakout, the interview process, workshop 1, workshop 2, the survey, etc. So these are the next steps going forward, just so you're aware. As I said, we're going to try to get some input. We'll have a question and answer session this evening for as long as you'd like. As I said to someone earlier, we're not timing you like they do at the Board of County Commissioners. We just ask that you be respectful of other people's time as well. We'll incorporate into this report any additional input we get this evening. We're submitting the draft report, fingers crossed, next week. So we've got a quick turnaround time to take our input from tonight and get it to the county, because county staff would like to get this before the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, February 20th. So you've been notified. This is tentative. Things always pop up, but the goal is right now we're on track to make a similar presentation to this to the Board of County Commissioners so they can hopefully adopt, accept, receive, whatever they decide, this public outreach report for the evaluation and appraisal review. That's all I have to say for this evening. Jessica is here. She's got a microphone. We'd like to open this up to questions and answers. As I said to the gentleman in the front row earlier, we'll do our best to answer the questions if we can. We may not have an answer this evening, but we will endeavor to get answers to you. We have, hopefully if you've signed in, we've got your contact information. And thank you very much for your time. Yes. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Jessica will work her way to you and, hold the microphone for you, and we'll start to take that input. Thank you.
Oh, I can't hold that. I'm going to stand up. You can hold
If you wouldn't mind giving us your name, too, that would be great. Thank you.
My name's Ben Lovelace. I lived here in this county over 10 years, maybe about 12. I used to live down in West Palm Beach. But the other day I was driving in West Palm Beach. I was driving on Southern and Okeechobee Boulevard. It's 8 lanes wide. It was bumper to bumper. I thought to myself, I don't want to live here again, right? After West Palm Beach, after there, I lived in Orlando. I lived in a nice neighborhood close to Universal. It's called Dr. Phillips. Traffic wasn't so bad, but over time, it got terrible. I do not want to live in Orlando. I then moved to Stewart, and I can kind of see it coming. I drive from the east side of 95 to the west side of 95 every morning, and there's 3 lanes on going west, and there's 1 lane going on to 95, and all 3 lanes are trying to get over to that 1 lane. And why is that? They're going to Palm Beach County. That's where they're going. They don't want to live there. They live in Stewart. That's why all those people are going down there. And growth is not going to make any of that better. Yesterday I was biking on Indian Street, and it was pretty busy. The wind was blowing a certain way, and the exhaust is killing me. It's not going to get any better with more growth. And so they tell me, Ben, we can't stop growth. We can't stop growth. And I say, yeah, but you can accelerate it. You can say, I approve that, I approve that, I approve that, I approve that, I approve that. But if you agree with that statement, you can also agree with this statement. You can decelerate it. I approve that. I approve that. And you can decelerate it, and we can live here a little bit longer before it gets like West Palm Beach, because it will. So my statement up there would be decelerate growth. There's nothing illegal about that, but you can do it. My second statement is pay attention to the community rating system. It's put out there by FEMA. We participate in that, Martin County. Nobody knows about it. But it gives you a deduction on your flood insurance. Right now, Martin County is rated a 5, and you get a, let me check here real quick, 25%, rating on your flood insurance. If you were able to improve our number, you can go all the way up to 1, but up to like a 3, you get like a 35% deduction in your flood insurance. If you get it up to 1, you get a 45% reduction in your flood insurance. Then more people would have flood insurance. But the thing that community rating system does, is the basic goal, is that if you build something, make sure that the runoff, the resilience, is not any worse than what's there. Like if it's a big field or trees or whatever, there's so much runoff and you get so much dirt and all the other things. Now if you build a development there, it needs to be as good as that. And if you do that, then the development that happens will be okay, and it will slow it down. So my second thing is pay attention to the community rating system, CRS, put out there by FEMA. And you can Google that and read all about it.
Thank you very much.
Carol Ann Leonard. On the Rural Lifestyle Amendment 3, commissioners don't listen to the people still. They just passed that 3,000 contiguous acres can be about 1 mile from the urban service boundary. They're chipping away at the acres of agricultural and open land that fall under the Rural Lifestyle Amendment. Stop overdevelopment. Limit the changes to the comp plan all the time. Have more ways that people can come outside of the workday to voice their opinions on everything. Do a workshop. Have affordable housing that is for low-income workers, not just first responders, medical, police, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go Hope Sound. There's a million questions I could ask here, but I think one of the primary ones is, what is affordable housing? Who defines affordable housing? What amount are we talking about? In affordable housing, if you are somebody that lives in a very high high value area, okay, where you're dealing with $3 and $4 and $5 and $6 million houses, affordable housing there might be considered $1.5 million. Okay, so every place else, and then you've got these other places on the other end of the spectrum where affordable houses is would be $100,000, $150,000 maybe. Okay, and then I went out west last summer, and I'm in Montana, and they have areas over there where the city actually provides affordable housing. They build these residences for the firemen, for the policemen, for your first responders, for people that work in grocery stores and everything else. And I think, I'm not positive on this, but I think there's a time limit where they're allowed to stay there so they can get their feet planted and move along and then possibly move to a different location. But at least they have starting area where they can live. And so it's something that we may want to consider, but we really need to define in affordable housing in the areas that are being built out, what is going to be considered affordable housing in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Paul Owens. I'm president of 1,000 Friends of Florida. I'm one of those 4% who responded to the survey who's not from Martin County. I happen to be from Orlando, and the gentleman's description of the traffic in Orlando, unfortunately, was pretty accurate. All it takes is periodic visits here to see what a tremendous thing you have here in terms of your environment and your quality of life, and how important it is to protect that. And a foundation of that, what's called the Martin County Difference, comes from the comprehensive plan. So the primary objective in evaluating and considering potential changes to the comprehensive plan should be to do no harm, the equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath for the comprehensive plan. The EAR process presents risk and opportunity for the comprehensive plan. The risk that some of those fundamental principles could be degraded, and what's so special about Martin County could be lost, but also the opportunity to strengthen the comprehensive plan, to make some of the changes that Dana outlined, for example, responding to the threat of climate change, for example. In our interview, one of the things that we discussed were some changes that can be found in Thousand Friends model property rights elements, some improvements to the comprehensive plan. There's a whole array of them. I'm just going to mention one, and it's particularly relevant when considering the controversial changes to the comp plan that have passed.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to
3-2,
order.
In recent years. Our
Do a roll call?
proposal
Do we
is
need to do a
a
roll call?
majority plus one requirement
Good. Yeah.
to changes to the comprehensive plan or rezonings, because those kind of changes can have permanent, irreversible impacts in the county. We think there should be, given the stakes, there should be a higher standard of approval for those sorts of changes. Anyway, there are more details on our website about that, and we're grateful at the thoughtful process that's underway and the amount of public input that has been recorded so far.
Thank you.
Bob Ernst, resident voter. I want to go over some of these issues that you brought up, and I want to commend you on a very good presentation.
Thank you.
You were very comprehensive. I'll take the tip later. Transportation. We are beyond capacity now, and we've got thousands of tenements approved that haven't even been occupied yet. Costco being one of them, 4,000. Marty's not the answer. Nobody rides the doggone thing. We pay a lot of money for it. It rides around town empty. We might want to look at something else, like find out what the issue is. Who needs Marty? And then maybe make a contract with Uber to handle them. But close the door before you open it. Because if you open it first, you're going to have a lot more people wanting to ride it than necessary. So we don't have any room for more development. Canna is my access to the world. I sit through stagnant traffic on Canna. I sit through lights multiple times, and according to the DOT, that's a failed roadway. And there's nothing more frustrating to sit in traffic. The light turns green, it turns red before you go through. It turns green again, and it turns red before you go through. We are over capacity now. Don't talk about more development. We have thousands of units that haven't been occupied yet, including Kipplinger at 4,200 units, which should never have been approved. So your transportation is your limiting factor. We don't want to, like the gentleman said, we don't want to see Palm Beach here. We don't want to see Broward here. We don't want to see Dade. That's why we're here. And if you destroy this place, where are we going to go? We can't go south. We can't go north. You are through developing this place. I want to talk about the Western Lands. What's happening in the Western Lands is an outrage. Those Western Lands were sacred. The USB was sacred. And now look what we've done to it. We should never improve Kipplinger, 4,200 units in the destruction of ag lands. Then came Becca. And then waiting in line is Calusa. We're looking for one more county commissioner vote against Calusa. We have a 3-2 vote for now. We need one vote. I'd like to see 3 more, 5 to stop Calusa. And what do we have behind Calusa? Have you people seen Story yet? Sign up and read about Story. Story is Abacoa down by Bridge Road, people. That's Nebraska. They are trying to destroy our sacred USB, our precious Martin County. It must stop. Affordable housing. I'm a scholar of personal finance, financial literacy. You do not put people into rental housing. Do you want to have a box full of rental receipts in 10 years? Do you live in rental housing? True affordable housing should be ownership. And there are ways to do it. I think it was mentioned over here. There are many ways to do it. And then you don't have people moving, because when you own a home, you're more stable than someone living in a tenement. We need to stop these 4-story tenements that have been approved by Bruna,
Clark and McDonald, the city commissioners. They're destroying small-town Stewart. It's got to stop, and the way to stop it is we need to get new people elected. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Sharon McGinnis, and the first comment I'm going to make, I hope you don't take too badly and let me make my second comment, but I have to disagree with you when you say that you had response of 664 people in Martin County. You did a terrible job. Most of the people in Martin County are retired, or it's the same people that are here that took your survey. They're connected. You know, you need to do better. Did you put signage on the side of the road that said, the survey's live, take it? Did you go to PTAs at schools and put things in people's backpacks telling their parents who are very busy, how's the quickest way? Go to a PTA meeting. Give people the opportunity to supply your survey. How many people live in Martin County? Not 665, right? You're going to give information to Martin County to make changes on a very, very small percentage of the people who live in Martin County, and I'm disappointed. I am disappointed in that. So I hope that you will try to do your next survey better so that you reach more of a populace of Martin County and we get a true sense of what's important in Martin County. The last thing I'd like to make a point on is our rural lifestyle changes that he was alluding to for Caluso Ranch, that we're going to give them the ability to be a mile away from our urban service boundary and have a development. And I know that we can't stop development, but the fact that we have put in there that we allow it to be a mile away from our freestanding urban service boundary is a disaster, because not maybe everybody here knows our freestanding urban service boundary is on the border of northern Martin County with Becker Road, and we know what's happening there. So are we sticking a pin in the map so that the development that is happening in St. Lucie County can start to peel over into Martin County? They've also allowed the developers to say, if it's not reasonable in cost, no matter how close a utility line is to your rural lifestyle, if you say it's not reasonable in your cost project, you don't have to have sewer. What is Martin County spending all this money on in saying they're going to protect our waterway? They're not protecting anything. Our water table, our waterways, they're not on the forefront of every decision that's being made on that comprehensive plan. There's no way we should allow any more development to happen where people are not hooked up to our utilities and paying for the water and the sewer that they are making on their properties. The other thing on the rural lifestyle is that when we had our first rural lifestyle amendment, they told us that we are so protected because the utilities that are provided in that PUD cannot leave that PUD. And what are they doing on the next change? They're taking PUD out and they're putting rural lifestyle. What is that going to happen? The same thing as having the freestanding thing. They're opening it up for developers to develop cost effectively and to daisy chain across our county. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tom Bausch. I lived for many years in Sewell's Point, so affordable housing in Sewell's Point is, for the few. Dana, I think that point that this gentleman made is quite appropriate. I think the affordable housing, if you would do more of an in-depth study of what is affordable for people, the young people in Martin County, it may be totally different than what it is in Okeechobee or Henry County or Glades. The other comment that Bob made about owning versus renting, I was fortunate to go to one of your sessions about affordable housing in Nashville, Tennessee. And the gentleman there, it was government owned, but it was ownership. And it would seem that that is a very successful program. One of the things that was brought, by the way, you did a fantastic job with this.
Thank you. It was a team effort, of course, everybody included, but.
One of the things that struck me is half of the commuters leave Martin County. Why? That's where the jobs are. Unless you change incentives to create more opportunities for whatever business it is, that's going to continue. They'll go where the jobs are. Most of my life, my business life, I live in Manhattan. I know exactly what transportation is so important, vital there. Without it, couldn't exist. Has to be more incentive to use the transportation system here. I'm happy to see it's improved over the years, but it's got a long way to go. But I think and finally, I think the young lady talked about communication, as that's the biggest key. I mean, the biggest problem that I see in this county is there's not, look at this room. This room should be standing room only. And I don't know if we'd really do a good enough job in communicating what you did here. I mean, you've got some great ideas here, great comments. And if this is the best that we can do, we're not getting to the people that we need to support something that live here. We've got 160,000 people here in this county. Well, we got a couple of hundred? I mean, something's missing in the communication here, and that's absolutely vital. Otherwise, you can see it in some of the legislation. The special interests take over, and they get their way. It seems. It seems to be because of lack of communication. And again, I thank you for the job you did. You and your people did a great job, and I hope we can, the media, get it out there. More communication. It's the key to making this successful. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. I would just like to, if I may, just touch briefly about the excellent comments about affordability and what is affordable. What are those ranges? Those ranges change from place to place. And as far as Tom mentioned, some of the different programs that he's heard of, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are cities all over the nation that are designing and tailoring programs to deal with the affordability issues on their terms. So it's not a hopeless case, and there's lots to learn from in other places. So thank you for bringing up both those points. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Douglas Ashley. I live in Rio/Jensen Beach. I don't want to give you my personal background as much. I'll keep it brief. I came down here in the 60s. I will compliment the people back in the 60s saving our beaches on Hutchinson Island. Because when I was a little kid, I used to ask my dad, why are all these public beaches? There's nobody here. Well, aren't we thankful tonight there is? A comment about the public being here. I've also been very active in the Rivers Coalition. It's hard to get people coming out. I don't want to criticize that group. That's excellent. If we didn't have that group, we'd be way behind. But the one that really lit this place up, I'll never forget, Brightline. I walked into the meeting, this room was packed. They were out in the lobby. So I would definitely, I'll say this positive, Mr. Little, I don't want to criticize, but the participant, I found this out, and I'll compliment the news right here. Channel 5, TC Palm, that's when I found out tonight was the night when I read an article yesterday about this meeting. So I would take numbers when you say 600 surveys, and there's a population of how many? Correct me if I'm wrong, 2 million people. You got 30 stakeholders. Okay. My background, I've been on both sides of the table. I was with national and international hotels on management, but I got heavily involved with development. I was also with some of the largest multifamily companies in the United States. I came down here about 35 years ago. I was involved with maybe over 15,000 apartments. I get disturbed back in the 30 years ago when we said affordable housing. There's a group, there's a bill, like they did the lottery. They took lottery money out for education, away from education. I think it's the Slishla, I'm trying to think of the name. There's a tax requirement that every time somebody has a property deed, that money is supposed to go into affordable housing. Well, I don't want to criticize government, but guess what the government has been doing? It's been taking that money away. And guess what the crisis is? Because all those years, 20 years, 30 years, all that money that should have been there wasn't there. So now we're in crisis. I say government usually is not proactive, they're reactive. So I criticize that. But when I hear workforce housing, I think the definition, public wonders what that definition is. Correct me if I'm wrong. Workforce housing to me, and I don't want to criticize, I think they're very, very important to our communities. The police, the firemen, the healthcare, and the educators. But what happens when somebody I talk to and they say, I'm working trying to find my other, now I'm doing for the last 15 years is residential housing. I confess, I only do resales. I don't promote new building. I don't want to criticize it, but that's where I am. But when I try and find people, they say they want to come back and live here. There aren't programs. There's a SHIP program. That's not adequate. Not when you have housing here that's so unaffordable. And everybody feels it's a dirty word. I had what they call in the apartment industry ABC apartments. A, the best, C's the worst. And I don't want to sound arrogant. We had A properties. They were luxury properties. But guess what? We had affordable housing inside those projects because you can do that. People don't realize that. When a developer comes in, they're good developers. I don't want to criticize the majority of them, but you can put affordable housing into luxury units, and you never know the difference. People don't understand that. But what I'm going to criticize right now is when people hear the infrastructure, okay? We're talking roads, and I think people see that. I hear a lot of comments like that. I used to live in Orlando. I'll never forget 30 years ago, people around I-Drive, you're talking about Dr. Phillips. I was standing there one day, and I was with Chick-fil-A waiting for an order, and the man next to me has a smile. You can tell I'm not bashful talking. I said, why are you so happy? Oh, it's great down here. I said, where are you coming from? Atlanta. And I used to have monthly trips to Atlanta. I said, why do you like it here so much? The roads. Well, 30 years ago, you go up to Orlando now, it's much, much worse. I'll never forget Orlando 20 years ago. You go on I-4, it stops. Not an accident, it stops. I'm seeing the growth here now, and it scares me. It really scares me. And I see some of the projects. My other background for 10 years, I was with the Rio NAC. I am a very positive person with the government. I was involved with the Rio NAC. We got a project over there now. I'm proud of it, but guess what? Nobody's done traffic counts. That's why we're talking about transportation. People don't do the traffic counts. I want people to be aware of that because people obviously see it and see the results. People are approving projects without traffic counts, and that really disturbs me because what you're going to get is worse and worse. We all know it. Like I said, we're reactive instead of proactive. I've taken much, much more of your time. Thank you very much.
I was good to you and then work my way back.
All right. I can't see him if he's standing there. Hi, my name is Mary Dawson. I am a resident. I came here today to talk about something entirely different. It is in the comprehensive plan. I represent the Martin Grade Scenic Highway, and it is mentioned in the comp plan, and scenic corridors in general are mentioned in the comp plan, and the scenic quality of our life is part of what has made life in Martin County so beautiful over the years. I would like to see the strength and the protections for the scenic highways, scenic corridors improved, and I definitely would
Excuse me, I'm sorry. In the front row, we're having a hard time hearing. Thank you.
I didn't hear.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Now, that's what I came here to talk about. But after listening, I think the message you're getting today is that almost everybody in this room thinks we're losing Martin County. And we've been losing it for a while. And one of the things, I got to several different points. One of the things that I wanted to say about your presentation is your poll is really not reliable. It's a self-selecting poll, and like the other person said, it is the questions and answers are really kind of open-ended and non-specific. Specifically, the one, excuse me, the question on redevelopment and infill, redevelopment on corridors. You asked if you'd like to see redeveloped parcels, but you didn't ask about infill. And infill development is what's killing us right now in our urban area. It's taking down all the green spaces and putting up apartments where we used to have, or where we hoped we would have, some sort of compatible development. We're not getting compatible development. The other people are talking about the difference between rental housing and single family or owned housing. That is a humongous difference because it's a different people. Previously, when we first got here, almost everybody in Martin County owned their own houses. Everybody in Martin County was vested in the school system. They wanted everything to improve. We worked together. When your proportion of transients increases, and I got nothing against transients, but this is just a fact of life, it changes the relationship with the community. And I believe that that is part of, again, what is generating a negative response to what's going on in the county. Not to mention that it looks terrible and it's incompatible. On the question of affordable housing, we were working on affordable housing and how would we get it in 1980, in 1990, in 2000, 2010, all over the country, somewhere in every town, somebody is saying, what are we going to do about affordable housing? It's not, you can't fix it by the legislature suddenly putting 90 units on 6 acres in downtown Palm City. It's not going to make it affordable. Every time we've had a plan, we've approved a development that has required affordable housing in it. It's a joke. It doesn't stick, and it just does not seem to be a functional answer that anybody has come up with. So changing our laws to weakening our laws, tweaking our laws to get more affordable housing is not necessarily going to make us the community we want to be. And that's the point about this planning. It's supposed to make us the community we want to be. We're not supposed to be the community that they teach in planning college. We should have a right as the citizens of Martin County to choose where we want to go. And it just seems that we keep saying we want one thing and getting something else, which is part of the frustration. Let me see. Oh, one last thing on affordable housing. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who said we don't have affordable housing and the workers are not living here and everything. We discussed, what if the boundary of Martin County was halfway through Martin County and halfway through St. Lucie County? Would we still have an affordable housing problem in Martin County? I think that doing affordable housing on a county-by-county basis may not be the way to look at it. There's a lot of much bigger cities that have less expensive housing and more expensive housing in it in different neighborhoods. So that would be an artificial subject.
Thank you. I think you might be surprised what houses are going for in Port St. Lucie these days.
I didn't hear that.
I'm going to put this out there at the risk of offending anyone, but I don't know about the rest of you, but most of the people that I know in my life that are professionals that I've known for a long time were renters at one point in their life. And so I think that I would just ask that when we talk about affordability and rentals and tenements, that we just think that most of us have been renters at one point in our lives. So I just ask for that little bit of sensitivity. Next, please.
We were flipping a coin to see who would go next back here. So Robin Cartwright, not a first-time caller, long-time listener. Okay, so regarding, this is your housekeeping items that you referenced. I have a few, so bear with me. Regarding affordable housing, there's actually a waiting list for affordable housing according to the Housing Authority from the City of Stuart. In July of 2023, there were 1,546 applications of people waiting for affordable housing, and that's just what is governmentally available. With regards to that, the University of Florida, their housing data clearinghouse, said that the affordable housing rate for HUD for a 2-bedroom is $1,458 per month. However, Zillow rates the rent index here at $2,520, and that was both in July of 2023. For context, Bridgeview, which is in the city of Stuart, annexed in to be developed, said that they would have 10% of their units available at quote-unquote affordable workforce housing. Their rental units for a 2-bedroom are going for $2,435. They have no applications. There is no clawback in the ordinance. There is nobody in the city of Stuart monitoring this. So now Bridgeview is saying that they have no units available for workforce housing because nobody applied, because we have no clawback measures. With regards to the funding for the I'm curious about why it is not in our clawback measures or comprehensive plan, why there's no funding for redevelopment or agricultural preserves instead of mitigating fees for things like taking down trees. Why are we not investing in farming and green space? Babcock Ranch in the central part of Florida towards the west coast of Florida does an amazing job with this. We should look to them for a best practice. So questions for housekeeping for the comp plan that I hope will be considered. I've asked the county this, but I'm not their favorite person, so maybe you can help. Why are so many items, when we write these text amendments, intentionally left vague? We have a lot of room for commissioners to then interpret that for their own inclusion. And what we end up getting is a hodgepodge of what should be a very consistent land planning. And instead what we get is what one commissioner favors because of what their constituents or their donors, more so, what they want. Why are there allowances or restrictions? What allowances or restrictions are there for the growth department to encourage them to do holistic planning? We've seen this over and over again, where we don't look at traffic studies holistically, we don't look at school concurrency holistically, and what we end up with is a lot of a situation where we have an overpopulation. To Bob's point earlier, we're going to see about 3,600 apartments and rental units and townhomes come online in the city of Stuart in the next 2 years. The schools are not prepared for that. Traffic is not prepared for that. Why aren't there provisions to encourage review of the project versus the applicant? In every application that we see, oh, the applicant is such a nice guy, we should give him this project, instead of it being based on the merit of the project itself. It doesn't matter that they're nice, that has absolutely no bearing on the infrastructure that it creates. What's being done to prohibit continual edits to text amendments, for example, the rural lifestyle that we've already discussed? What's being done to prevent annexations into the city of Stuart so that we don't have a continual overbuild and a higher height limit throughout the city? With pending Florida legislature from Representative Overdorf to restrict people from suing state agencies like the DEP, why are we not shoring up our comprehensive plan to encourage developer-paid consultants that they go unchallenged? That is coming before the Florida state legislature, and that will put us in another bind where we will have further home rule removed. With all of the concerns about losing home rule to Tallahassee, why are we not making the comp plan more defined and intentionally less ambiguous to avoid things where we have division of administrative hearing lawsuits from constituents, like myself? Why are there not requirements for unbiased experts or groups, I'm going to pick on the Indian River Keeper because I saw him come in, to provide insight to avoid issues so that they can provide impact about development on our things like our estuary? It is very easy to get a developer-paid consultant to say that something is absolutely wonderful and great and it will have less impact than cows. We heard that, which was really insane. Why are we not having somebody who has no vested interest in a project give feedback? Not a county employee, not a county staff person, but somebody who truly has a vested interest and is truly an expert in something so that they can say, this is ultimately the impact. And if you can win over somebody, in this case, like the Indian River Keeper, who says, yeah, it will not have an impact on the estuary, that would carry way more weight than a developer paid consultant who comes in and is paid to say yes to anything a developer asks for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hold it and give your arm a rest.
As long as you promise to give it back.
I'll be sure to be short rest on your arm. My name is Mike Circus. I'm a carpenter. I live in Palm City. In addition to being a carpenter, my wife and I run a small family farm. And if you'll indulge me for a second, I'd like to tell you that in farming, land planning is imperative. And I'll give you the example that our borders, our horses that are bordered on our land, they have a natural pond they like to swim and they like to play in. It's a pretty piss poor place for me to put my future chicken coop. That's just planning. You don't put a chicken coop in a pond. It's reality. And the reason why I bring that up is because our comprehensive growth management plan, it's in the title, it's our growth management plan. We recognize the reality that some growth is going to come. So in order to maintain our way of life, our difference and our style, we're trying to plan so we have that come in, as anybody said, holistically, right? And I bring this up because I've taken a look earlier today at the secondary urban services boundary. And the 30,000 foot statement you made earlier today, if you go onto the county's mapping website, the GIS mapping website, and you take a look at the secondary urban services boundary from that 30,000 foot perspective, you'll find somewhere in the neighborhood about half, maybe even 65% of our secondary urban services boundary is located on the east side of 95 north of Bridge Road. But when you actually go in and you start clicking on some of these properties and see who owns the majority of that land, the vast majority is owned by South Florida Water Management. It's environmentally protected, perpetuity. It's all the locks to Lucy headwaters. That's fantastic. But it simply doesn't make sense that we would say this is our secondary urban services boundary. When the primary is full, this is where we're going to develop. We're literally telling people 20 years from now, 15 years, 10 years, developers, hey, all these environmentally protected lands, that's where we intend to build. Now, maybe that's a mistake and we don't intend to build there. I would assume that if it's state-owned land, not private-owned land, and it's in environmental protection, it's not going to be developed. But unfortunately, that has an unintended consequence where we're telling our developers, our plan is unrealistic, so we have a very difficult time telling you no to your sprawl because you cannot have it both ways. You can't simultaneously tell somebody you cannot build outside the urban service boundary. You must develop inside the urban service boundary. By the way, we're going to have all this land owned by the state. We're going to artificially remove this land from development roles for the urban services area. It's simply not a developable standard. So if we're going to go through this process and we're going to try to go through our comp plan, we're trying to review it for these minor changes at the state level, why wouldn't we go all in and take a look at it and say, okay, if we have a poor plan to begin with, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to anybody, but the reality is our comp plan from 30 years ago has been just bastardized over the last 30 years by our commission. So if we don't have it realistic to what's going on today, then we're never going to stop the sprawl. And we've seen the sprawl over and over and over again. So if we're going to take a look at our comp plan, let's get realistic about it and stop leaving lands for development that we know are not going to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, what is your last name? Your last name again?
Circus. S as in Sam, Y-R-K-U-S.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Sean Reed. I was born and raised in Martin County. I used to be very proud to say that we live where people vacation here when they come to visit. I believe the residents have been pretty consistent over the last several years. They're angry, they're upset. It's almost like our voices don't matter. We have a commission that's been pro-growth, and they've said yes to every project that's come through the city or the county. I know this presentation was about the comp plan, but we as voters keep electing commissioners that are supposed to represent us that put them in that seat. Instead, it seems it's the developers that have more invested and they get what they want when they come in front of the commission. They seem to forget that we voted for them. And also, it's amazing how we had a current county commissioner that campaigned against a rural lifestyle amendment, and she was the flip-flop vote on that. It's embarrassing. I couldn't imagine having a legacy like that, especially being a fourth generation. I hope when the voters show up in August that they come to the polls. I know myself personally, I'm running in the city of Stuart in Group 4, and hopefully we get enough support because we need more no votes in the city and the county to finally stop the developers from winning. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Sean.
Good evening. I'm Kyla Shea. I'm the president of Trailside Homeowners Association, and I'm going to speak for a lot of us that are along 96th Street, also known as Pratt Whitney. I'm going to take you back 15 years. Secondary urban service boundary. We're going to extend the water and sewer to South Fork High School, just for the good of the kids. In comes Christ Fellowship. Oh, but it's okay, because it's a secondary urban service boundary. So we're going to break all those rules. The rules at that point were held by Foxwood, and it was a minimum of 2-acre developments there. So the church bought 900 and some acres. Trailside objected, other communities didn't. Here comes High Point. Find it ironic that they flooded. Good name. They don't have the drainage right on Pratt Whitney. At the point that the church was going in, our development asked, since the county didn't require our developer to put in turning lanes, if we could have them. Response from the county: 5 people have to die within a mile of either side of our gate for them to allow us to have turning lanes. So the price of turning lanes and development is lives. They say all the golf courses around us, Atlantic Fields, the 3 others that are out west on Canner now, aren't going to affect our traffic. You want to pull the other leg? Because we don't believe you. We don't believe you at all. And here comes Story. Let's have another tradition and another Abacoa. Maybe we'll get those 5 deaths.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your name for me, please?
Kyla, K-Y-L-A. Last name Shay, S-H-A-Y.
Thank you.
My name's Nancy Brownie, and I am a 4th generation here in Martin County, and a 6th generation in Florida, if I'm counting. You know, they were my grandma's side. I'm grateful for Martin County, and you know, chose to raise my family here. And there's so much. I appreciate the slideshow that you put together. Just some of the things that you definitely got me thinking on other things. But the primary reason I'm here today is I've seen a town, and we know growth is inevitable, but like many people have said, it's about the plan and how we accelerate that growth and how we will grow. Because we can't actually say, I think the Keys actually just said no more building down in the Florida Keys. We actually can say, no, we're not going to build here. We're not going to do this here. We can actually put those perimeters out. Particularly with the Story project out on Pratt Whitney, the developers wanting to put 4,000 homes. And so we would have to make that 6-lane highway. You know, there's no hospitals, the schools. It just does not logically make sense. This would be a total crumbling of Martin County. And like they said, oh, well, he's going to make his own town. That's not what this is for. And DeVosta bought that a long time ago when Martin County was really Martin County. He knew the deal. And I don't know how old he is exactly, but I'm sure that this project is not something he's invested in. He's not going to be a part of. We're going to be the ones suffering from this development. And I think that a lot that has been said here with the commissioners, that we elect people that we think are actually going to do what they say they're going to do, and which is to actually plan and look and take everything into consideration, not just you know, yes to development and we need more housing. Creating more houses doesn't make them more affordable. You know, maybe having a workshop on how to manage our money, or you know, because I'll be honest, people in graduating, they don't know how to even function in life. They need to understand how to buy land. They don't know any of this. They've just they go and rent. So maybe there's another wheel we can invent to help people that are struggling with their finances and come alongside them. But it's not just to build more apartments. That doesn't make the income, come up or come down.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jim Moyer.
Jim?
I'm sorry that I left. I had to go do an LPA meeting.
I'm sorry for you.
So if I'm being redundant, I apologize. I think that we need to get back to observing our residential capacity calculations, and if we don't, we've got almost no measure of how fast we're going or where we can grow. And I think it's negligent that we don't have our urban capacity maps clearly defined and that we haven't been updating them consistently over the last while, because many of the new developments that are moving forward are using that lack of urban capacity and lack of knowledge to allow themselves to really pretty much obliterate the urban service boundary.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've got time for 2 or 3 more questions. We're not going to shut you down, but...
Okay, I'm Greg Braun, Executive Director of the Guardians of Martin County, and I'm going to support many of the things that were said this evening because I think we've had some great suggestions. I've got a couple more that we haven't hit on, though, so I hope they'll ring true with people as well. I'm going to start off with echoing the comments of Tom Bausch here that I thought the number of respondents to the surveys and attendance here was unfortunate. And I don't think that's because people don't care. I think it's because they didn't know about the meeting. Somebody mentioned, a couple people have mentioned to me seeing an article in the paper yesterday, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to talk with the TC Palm reporter and get it into the paper because there was nothing in the paper. I had to search on the county's website to find out where and when. So I think more people would have been here if the Regional Planning Council, that as I understand it is the county's contractor for the public relations and outreach component, would have done a more extensive job in advertising the meeting. Our commissioners over the years have campaigned on the premise of not moving the urban services boundary, and we have elected most of them on that campaign promise, and hopefully we will continue to do so. I'm going to speak out against freestanding urban services district, and it's unfortunate that Sharon McGinnis, who spoke on that before, has already left because that was a travesty. Yes, those commissioners who voted for that met their obligation of not moving the boundary, but creating a whole new freestanding urban services district and allowing intensive development in that area, that was inappropriate. And we're going to hope that through this EAR process, you'll take Paul Owens up on his offer and make the requirement that any adjustments or comp plan amendments that change the urban services district, whether it's by moving the boundary or creating new ones, would need to be approved by a supermajority, majority plus 1. One of the items that wasn't talked about is protection of water quality. You know, that's extremely important to Martin County residents. I mean, when we can't go into water because it's too polluted, and the county, I will give them credit for doing a lot for water quality monitoring, being very good at getting grants to do water quality monitoring. But forgive me for saying so, but that's backwards. The county has the authority to require developments that come in, and most particularly those that are discharging into bodies of water that are already designated as impaired. The county should have the responsibility and the requirement to require that those developments do water quality monitoring to make sure that they're not having a further adverse impact on those receiving waters. And we're not doing that monitoring solely for the sake of monitoring. We're doing it to protect the waters. So along with that requirement that should come within the PUD process for water quality monitoring is the next step of requiring that if that monitoring reveals that there is degradation to the receiving water, that the developer has the responsibility to go back in and retrofit that system to make sure that it doesn't further pollute the water. I'm going to echo Mary Dawson's comment about some concerns that I had with the wording in some of the survey questions. She mentioned one of them, one that particularly caused me some challenges figuring out how to respond to it, was the one about shorelines. And you spent some time talking about that, Dana. And you were kind of incredulous that some people could vote against not wanting to change the county's requirements on shoreline protection. Well, I think it's unfortunate that the citizenry has become so suspicious of what's going on at the county level that, yes, you put in the EG, living shorelines, and I think most of us would agree that living shorelines are the right thing to do. But what we have to be suspicious of is that the county will interpret the responses to that to mean we can harden those shorelines. We don't have to put in living shorelines. We can put in a vertical seawall because that will protect the property. That is, it led me, and I expect others, to be challenged in how to respond to that question. So I'm going to ask that as you evaluate those responses, you see that there are different ways that those questions can be interpreted. Finally, I'm going to comment on the whole issue of infill and affordable housing and everything else. And yes, we are in a little bit of a conundrum about not wanting to move the urban services boundary and instead of that doing infill development. But we don't want to create an urban jungle. And so one of the other aspects that the Guardians were dismayed at was a decision by the county not too long ago to allow payments in lieu of preservation for properties within the CRAs that would otherwise need to be preserved. Putting money into the county coffers does nothing to address the loss of environmental values in those areas that should be preserved. So if that's going to happen, and we hope that it doesn't, but there should have been a requirement in that whole process that at least those monies go into buying other conservation lands. I think that pretty much ends my...
You're referring specifically to the CRA amendments?
That's right. That's right. But if we see that it's happened in the CRA, those of us with some cynical outlook on things will see that the next projection is going to be, okay, how about the whole urban services district? We faced that a couple years ago when there was the big controversy about small wetlands. And some of you may recall that. It was quite a furor. The developers came and said, if you don't want to move the urban services boundary, you got to give something. Let's give away those small wetlands that are within the urban services district. Luckily, we had a standing room only crowd at the county commission, and seeing that they were going to get voted down, that was withdrawn. But I think just as we have seen what's happened with urban or rural lifestyle and now the proposal to change that, I'm afraid that payment in lieu of preservation within the CRAs is the first step of things to come, and we don't want that to happen, which goes back to comp plan amendments need to be approved by majority plus one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kerry Meyer, Martin County. I'll say west of I-95. That'll give you a frame of reference. Couple comments, couple questions. Number one, thank you for your efforts in making this available to us. I will say, however, I only learned about this, my wife and I learned about this just a couple of days ago through TC Palms. So reiterating a lot of what was said, putting the word out, that did not seem, there was a lot of effort there. In fact, one really has to wonder if that wasn't what the county commissioners and even growth management may have been looking for.
I'm going to interrupt you right there. I don't want to sound defensive, but I can tell you there have been 2 newspaper articles. This has been on the county's front page of the website since we started in August. It is currently being broadcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and it was also advertised through all of these social media outlets. So I'm telling you that I think we can always do better, but there was nothing nefarious about the advertising in this meeting.
Okay.
I take offense.
Thank you. A couple other comments. Going back to the survey, there is a question you may want to consider, and that is asking if the respondent is a county employee. That may help put a viewpoint on the question.
I'm sorry, sir. Would you repeat that?
Put a question on the survey if the respondent is a county employee.
Okay.
It may help better understand the answers to the questions, and especially where you get a 50-50. Just a suggestion. Comment, really a question. The fellow over here brought it up, I believe, when he was talking about Orlando and the traffic, and he was saying that traffic should definitely be considered part of the evaluation of developments and so on and so forth. A couple of months ago, we had a county commissioner, and we also had growth management state that traffic cannot be taken into account when considering new developments. I don't know if that's actually the truth or if that was just their comment, but
no, traffic
it doesn't seem logical.
Unfortunately, traffic wags the dog. Is the tail that wags the dog many times. I'm being told, I don't mean to cut you off, I'm being told that we have to pack up here within 5 minutes, so I just want to give everybody a warning. We have to be out by 8. They got to shut down at 8.
One other quick question. I guess recent states, like maybe legal statutes changes. Our county is saying there's in the decisions that they're making, they're very concerned about always being sued by developers, being sued by folks who want to build golf courses. If that really is the case, then that should be reevaluated at the state level, because what that means is that developers are now in control of the decisions that are going on in the county. And one last quick question. Do the commissioners or even growth management, do they have any obligation to seriously consider the report that you're putting together and pulling together? My concern is they'll read it, it'll go in one ear and out the other, and they won't give it serious consideration. And so the question would be, this report, do they really have to take it into consideration, or are they just going through the motions?
I can't speak for the commission. I can tell you that we've been working on this for 8 months, and I've heard the critique about the advertisement and communication. But as I said, we've had a survey, we did interviews, second workshop, first workshop. So we're doing this with every intention of it being taken seriously. And by the way, we've been working very closely with staff through the entire thing.
And again, I'd like to thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, thank you very much for taking your time, spending your evening with us, and for your candid input. We appreciate it. As I said, we are intending to submit the report, the draft, next week, and then hope to be before the County Commission the 20th of February. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.